And I'm not the biggest systems guy, but I realized the fact back then, like, oh, I could create 20 episodes in a day and schedule them to go out for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks. That's amazing. That in my mind, and then I could hire out different pieces of it. I could schedule it. I could have more control over it versus like having to post on Instagram every single day. That was the biggest attraction to me, just the systems of it.
Luis, you have had the privilege to work with, I think you said over 500 podcasts up to this point. I know you've worked with celebrities, big public figures, but you've also worked with some smaller brands as well, probably even housewives and maybe stay-at-home moms. What has been the single thing that you've identified in all of these podcasts that succeed that they all have in common?
One single thread I think that the ones who do it well have in common is that they're obsessed with improvement. And that sounds kind of esoteric or not so tangible, but the ones who are really good are obsessed with improvement. And even if they start from like level 0 or whatever they start with, some are celebrities, some are like you said, house moms, right? Um, they're okay with the thought of this is gonna suck right now, but I'm going to every single episode or every video, if you're doing video podcasting, I'm going to get incrementally better. I'm gonna get better at the intro, the mid roll. I'm gonna get better at the show notes, whatever, right? And I think that's the thread. I look at all the podcasters, even the ones who have like they already have a lot, they already like are super successful. They'll come to me and be like, yeah, I think next season we're gonna do this, or like then we're gonna do this, and maybe we should try this. Like they're always kind of like an upward trajectory, whereas the ones who fail think they're gonna be hot shit from the gate, and then they don't really care about improving, really and truly.
That piece right there, though, that's such a big part of success in anything you do. I mean, I know you've, succeeded in health and fitness. You have a story and journey kind of behind that. You've been an incredibly successful entrepreneur coming from an entrepreneurial family as well. So I think that continuous improvement, man, is actually a key indicator of success in anything that we do in life. So it's no surprise that it's what makes, the shows kind of stand out. What you talked about the ones that are already in it that don't succeed. I'm sure you talk to people all the time that they're like, hey, Luis, I want to start a podcast, right? This was me for probably 4 or 5 years. Like I would have a list of probably at one point 50 different show ideas. But I needed kind of a defining moment in my life to kind of push me over the ledge. What keeps somebody from jumping off the cliff that is constantly saying, I want to start a podcast?
This kind of comes out in tons of conversations, and it happens. I think it's different for everybody. A couple of common ones I hear are like the overwhelm in one area of podcasting or video podcast creation, which is like maybe it's a tech for some people. A lot of other people, it's like, I don't know what I'm going to say after these 10 topics. Like I got 10 and I don't really know where to go after that. Another one is like keeping consistent. I know my struggle has been, I want to do, this many episodes a year, or like I want to produce content, but I know I'm gonna fizzle out. I'm gonna get busy. I'm gonna travel. I'm gonna not have time to record. If I do record stuff, it's gonna suck. So all these other things come in, I think, for people. And the good news is there's systems and there's processes for all of that stuff that can help you navigate how to solve those problems. So those are kind of the big three. It's like tech overwhelm, topic overwhelm, or like they're afraid that once they start this train, they can't, they're not gonna, they're gonna have to stop it because they're not gonna be able to keep going. And a lot of those just mental barriers.
Yeah, I think for me a big part of it was the tech side of things, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of the role that you played in the launching of the Supe Human Life, a massive part back in the beginning. But like you said, there's systems out there, there's organizations, there's agencies, there's AI tools now that can help with a lot of this stuff as well. So, do you think that the podcasting industry, is oversaturated, or is it still a time for somebody that can jump in and make success with it?
I think it's like everything, like the housing market, right? Or like, when the stock crashes, you can kind of see when the tide goes out, you can see who's been like swimming with their no underwear. So it's kind of like that with podcasting. Like when the shit hits the fan, no, if I can curse on here, but when stuff hits the fan, um, you're going to see a bunch of shows drop and stop producing like you've already seen. And that's just, and it's not like it's anyone's fault. That just happens like a natural like cycle of business. So I think it's cyclical. I think right now we're seeing a correction of like, there's a lot of shows that have died and stopped producing either because they got busy, there's not enough money in it for them, or they ran out of money. So I think that's happening a lot, and you'll see a lot of ghost shows or dead shows. But the ones who Like so I don't, I think it's a little over, I think you're seeing a correction right now and it being oversaturated. It's getting better now. I think now you can still come in and crush it. I think the hard thing is though, is to have kind of like a really a narrow lens and a wide audience. I guess I'll call it that, narrow lens and a wide audience. Meaning, there's a couple of creators I follow on Instagram that my wife has shown me, and it's like the people who have you ever seen like the fast food secrets guy? It's this guy who talks about fast food secrets, like the secret menu at Wendy's, or like how to get this type of special burger at like McDonald's. And if you think about it, like he's blown up. Like I looked at his, I one day I went down a rabbit hole and looked through his stuff. And I was looking at when he first started posting, which was like a year ago or something like that. And he had like no followers, no nothing. And then he starts like, you can see him as he transitions and he tests a bunch of different content. And then he had one reel that went off. And then he started doing everything else outside of that. Like he started doing the same type of reel over and over and over again. And he's got millions of followers now. There is a room for people to grow. I think you need a wide lens and a narrow topic, or a narrow something that makes you unique and different. Um, and I think that if for the people who get that right, you can grow really, really quickly. Once you find out what content works and double down on it. The hard part is finding that content that works for you. Like this guy talks about fast food secrets, and it's a huge audience because who hasn't eaten a fast food? But it's stuff that no one else is talking about. So he's got that two edged. He's got that double. He's got kind of like both things going for him. Super wide, attractive topic. No one else is talking about it. So I think you can find something like that. Those two things, check those boxes. You can be really, really successful.
Yeah, it's incredible, and it reminds me of a statement I don't know if you knew Corby, that was a part of Vince's mastermind. Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't know him too well, but I knew of him. He was a brilliant guy.
yeah, an incredible guy. God rest his soul, we lost him, but he was an amazing influence, just an incredible speaker. The ability to articulate his thoughts and words, it was a true gift and superpower that he had. He always had this saying, he obviously taught business and taught sales and taught marketing. That marketing is nothing more than a fancy 9-letter word for test. And I've really tried to embrace that. I have people that reach out to me all the time that'll ask me, what do you think about these two marketing pieces? Or what do you think about this headline? Or what do you think about this funnel idea? And I sometimes feel like it's a cop out answer, but it's like, test it, right? Throw it out in there into the market and see if it sticks. And I think for people that are thinking about getting something started when you have no audience, that's a perfect time to throw a bunch of shit at the wall to see what's going to stick, because there's very few people that are going to see the stuff that doesn't work, but it takes that one idea, right? That one video that just takes you off. And then if you could break it down and identify the formula, now you have a repeatable process. And this guy probably will become a multimillionaire if he's not already, based off of secret menus at fast food. Now, I wouldn't really support the idea, but I'll get some beef patties from McDonald's every once in a while if I'm on the carnivore diet. But hey, it's working, right? And he identified, like you said, that narrow niche with a wide lens of an audience.
Yeah, it's so funny, dude, because I keep on seeing that over and over again. Those two characteristics where it's like, there's another one. So there's a couple. I'm going off Instagram people because my wife sends me a ton of them, but these could all be podcasts, mind you. And I'll send you. There's another secret I've learned around short form content and why you should do it before podcasting, but we'll get to that in a second. Um, there's a couple who they do nothing but go to like Texas Roadhouse, Longhorn, Olive Garden, and they rate the kids menu, and they'll buy stuff only from the kids menu, and they'll tell the audience which has the best deal for price, for like value, best taste, what days you can go, all this stuff. So it's like date night ideas just by buying off the kids menu. So you save a bunch of money, and you get the same amount of food as you would a normal meal. And that's all they do. They've doubled down on this one thing where they just go and survey all these different local food chains, and they only eat from the kids menu, and they have blown up. All right. And it's this one simple idea, but again, no one else talking about that stuff. And everybody eats at, restaurants like Olive Gardens or like the mid-service tier. Again, those two same boxes, wide lens, but no one else is talking about that specific, vertical or that very specific topic. It is very, very interesting to see how that's working. Yeah, that's just a theme I keep on saying, man. And I can't help but like share it because I think it's so important when you're thinking of a new show.
Yeah, and that's why you're here today, man, because you see the world through a different lens than a lot of other people, due to the fact that this is what you've been doing for 6, 7+ years now, and it's your life. So you have a unique outlook on a lot of these things. I need to kind of jump in real quick as Coach Frank, right? Just for the male audience, because I think that there's another thing in that example that you shared right there about the relationship. And I don't know where that couple's relationship was before they started doing this, but I can tell you it's probably on fire right now due to the sheer fact that they've been able to gamify date night. In reality, that's what they've been able to do. So, gentlemen, if you're out there right now, we're going to take a slight pivot. We're going to get back to podcasting here in a minute. Find ways to gamify the dates with your woman because it will just make the intimacy and the connection so much deeper. But that's just kind of a sidebar right there that I obviously had to kind of share because of the lens that I see the world through. Do you think some of that rebalancing or kind of getting back to where it's not oversaturated is due to what happened in 2020? I think we obviously, and you would probably know a little bit more of the data and numbers, but people were sent home from work. A lot of people didn't have a whole lot to do. I know I saw people that were starting podcasts that back then I thought, this is not going to stick. This is just something that you're kind of looking to do now. Do you think that's kind of playing a role in it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So in 2021, 2020, there was a ton of people who started a podcast with a Zoom account and a microphone. And that's okay, no problem. But they soon got bored or boring. Like either they stopped because they didn't like it, or they realized it wasn't working because no one was downloading and listening and they weren't going anywhere, or they just found something else. They got a new job, they just changed their career. So I've seen that happen over and over again. There's tons of dead shows out there. And yeah, it's a big correction. It's one of the good points, yeah, around like the correction, and that's a big part of it.
Well, let's speak to the audience here a little bit. We'll get into your story here later on a little bit, but as we're talking about some of these ideas, I know those were Instagram that you were talking about with the fast food and then the date night there as well. But I think a lot of people when they think about a podcast, it's got to be this, deep meaning of personal development, or I got to be a comedian like Joe Rogan or Theo Vaughn, or I got to be an intellectual like Jordan Peterson, or I got to have something that massively inspires others, but you're in the mix, man. You know that there's a podcast for carpenters. There's a podcast for plumbers. Talk to, the guy out there that's listening, small time entrepreneur, maybe even works a 9 to 5, but he's got this passion that, other people need to hear about. What makes a good show?
It sounds like a broken record, but so I think first of all, what makes we have to put a definition on what a good show is, because a good show for the person who's like, I work a 9 to 5, I don't really care about the work stuff. I'm super passionate about, being a coach at my local flag football, like coaching kids or leadership development for children or young leaders. Maybe that's their thing, and they could care less if they have a million listeners, but they could just really, really, really want to have a show that inspires the 50 people who listen. So in terms of show quality, like how to make like a really well produced podcast, people listen, they're like, damn, like, okay, this is good. If we're going down that road versus the audience, like how to grow a bigger audience, etc. I think those two paths are very different. There's just some correlation between the two, but I think if we're just going off of like how do we make a show, and I want to ask you, Frank, like what is more valuable for you in answering this question? Is it like a good show is like a big audience, or a good show is like a well produced podcast that is maybe fulfilling internally?
Yeah, I think something that you're proud about. Like I don't think that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to listen to this that, maybe I'll be wrong here. And if I am, guys, please message me. But I don't think that the next Joe Rogan, the $100 million Spotify contract is listening to this audience right now. So good show in terms of it's something I'm proud about. It's something that is produced well. It's got clean audio. But it's got meaning and purpose, not just to the person talking to it, right? We can all stand here and talk into a microphone and listen to ourselves speak, but it's impacting the listeners' lives in a positive way.
Yeah, I think that if when I think of shows that have done that, I think of like they spent some time on the front end, whether it's a lot or a little. Maybe some people it will vary. They spent a lot of time or some time at least thinking about what is the end destination I want my listener, or end goal I want my listener to achieve, right? And then you reverse engineer everything back from that. So if I want my listeners to be better husbands, let's just say as an example, then I have to really map out what a good husband looks like. What does he say? How does he communicate? How does he spend time with his children? So like you're really kind of like thinking about the end state or desire you want for the audience. And then you're reverse engineering all of your content back from there. Well, if I need to be my good husband communicates really well with his wife, what communication, what are the skills we need to teach in these episodes so that they can have good communication, right? So I kind of break it down like that. You want something you're really proud of, like think about the end result in mind. This isn't anything new, but the same goes for a business, as same goes for a podcast. Like, we need to reverse engineer what's the end destination, and go back from that, and then look at like what skills, and then break that down further. Like, who can teach the skills? Is it you, the host, or is it someone else you got to interview? Um, and yeah, I think that's at a high level. That's how I would do it. That's how I do it with a lot of clients. If they're like, I want to be proud of this. Like, all right, we need to figure out what's the end goal here, because you can make great content, but if it's not alignment, or if it's not fulfilling, then you're going to, in 30, 40, 50 episodes, you're gonna be like, what am I doing this for? I love, like, sounds great, but I don't really care about it. Right. I don't care about jumping on the mic.
It's a great overarching principle, obviously, for the direction of the show that you want to take it from the beginning and making sure that you're always kind of following that. But I would say, even on a more granular scale, like an episode should have that kind of same thesis as well. And would you say shows that don't really click and episodes that don't really take off are due to there's no clear direction? We're not really, driving the audience to kind of do something. We're not teaching a core principle. We're kind of scattered all over the place. Is that something that you've seen in maybe people that are struggling to kind of get it to take off?
I think that, but also it's not entertaining. And when I say entertaining, I don't think you need to be Joe Rogan. I don't think you need to be JP Spears or whoever's funny to you. I think you just need to be entertaining in a sense. Like, I have a client, or a guy who's he runs a publicly traded company. He's not funny, but his show gets around like 10,000 downloads a month. And he's just been doing it every single week, no video, just audio. And he just tells little stories that are impactful to his audience. He's talking to CEOs and investors and stuff like that. And I've seen his show grow, and he's not doing anything sexy or fun. He's like, hey, beginning of the episode, he's like, hey, today you're going to learn 3 things. You're going to learn the way money works. You're going to learn what I'm doing with my son to invest his money. And I'm going to learn how I'm instructing him to grow his money. And it all starts right now. And then he just dives in, and he tells stories within each of those principles, right? Got a very clear format. So he's great at teaching, to your point. Like, every episode has a direction. By like, it's like, as soon as you listen to like the first minute, you know exactly where this episode's going, and you can say, yes, I'm in, or no, I'm out. And then in the episode, he's really good. He's masterful at just telling little stories that impart the lesson really well. So it's not a boring listen. Not just somebody just talking or ranting or just sharing their beliefs or thoughts. It's him kind of like teaching through story.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. And that's something I've tried to really hone in and focus in on. A big game changer for me was reading Stephen Pressfield's Turning Pro. It's probably somewhere I had Pressfield on the show, I think around 60 or 70 episode, but it was around that time for me that I began to look at myself no longer as an amateur, but I'm a professional podcaster. Despite whether I make a full-time living off it, which, I'm not, guys, doing, but if I could focus in on my ability to teach, to educate, to infotain, that was a big word that I remember hearing from Elliot Holst, was the infotainment. It's information in an entertainment type of way. Or you look at Patrick McDavid, value-tainment, value-based content with an entertaining kind of overall hook and theme to it. And that's the integration of the storytelling. For me, it's understanding how to carry and navigate the conversation. Am I speaking too much? Am I allowing the guest to speak? So it's kind of that back and forth dynamic. And I'm nowhere perfect at it, but I think some of the numbers have shown, and I think just our reach has shown that, hey, in the feedback I get from people is that I am improving.
Yeah, and if you see those numbers going up, if you see listening time go up, which you can track in like Apple, or you see just number of plays go up and downloads, like, that's a sign that, like, your titles are working, your content's is resonating with people. One thing I'll mention there too, Frank, is that, like, I think so many people overlook this, but it's just planning for an episode. For me, and especially if you're doing like a solo podcast, like, planning for your episodes, it will create a night and day difference in how your content is actually like useful to the audience. Like, I've noticed, if I don't plan very well in my episodes, the content I share will not be organized, it will not be useful, and it'll be very hard to edit, to be honest with you. If I am planned, recorded, I've got my Google Doc, I've got points, I've got like certain things I want to cite. You don't need to spend 10 hours on this, but spend an hour at least, just, really thinking about, okay, well, what's the direction here? What should they leave? What should they leave with when they're done with this episode?
Yeah. On average, I try to do for guest shows like this somewhere between 4 to 6. And a lot of that prep is listening to other pieces of content. If they've written a book, I'll dive deep into the book. I'll try to find 2 of their 3 top podcasts and listen to those. So that's going to be an insight to the way that they answer questions. And I'm looking for the questions underneath the questions. solo stuff, I probably would lean lower end on the total preparation. For me, I've noticed a lot of my nuggets come not when I'm thinking for the first time in real time, but when I have a core theme that I'm almost processing. Like it's really the processing that kind of reveals some of the information. So I don't prep as much for the solo stuff, but I'm heavy into the prep for the guest shows because I want to get underneath a lot of the questions and ask the ones that haven't been asked before. And that's sometimes the feedback that I've gotten from people. They're like, you ask me questions that I've never been asked before.
Yeah, that's a huge compliment, I think, because it's so I'm funny. I'm actually the reverse. So I spend less time on a guest interview. And I think because I'm really selective nowadays about who I interview because I want to interview specifically the people who have done it before so that the title and the story arc is much easier. Meaning like if I can go interview a guy who's done like, 3 million downloads a month for the last 3 years, I already know what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about how he built that, and that's it, period. Because I know what the title's going to be. And for my solo stuff, I find I need to really focus on like teaching stuff and being valuable, and that really helps. That forces me to like find B-roll and find sources and stuff to make it interesting, which we can get into later. But yeah,
Yeah, for somebody that's contemplating or thinking about, hey, I want to start a show. They don't have a massive brand. They're going to narrow a niche down. They're going to go, wide wide lens, narrow or narrow lens, wide audience type of things. Is it better to go guest style or solo?
for me, it comes down to the goal, and it always comes down to the goal. But like, if your goal is to become better at speaking, just you speaking, I think you should do solo. If you want to build your network and you want to potentially learn more, I think interviews are amazing. Like you learn a lot through interviews. I know I always do. So yeah, it depends on what your goal is. I find that solos are generally harder, and that's why. And for me as a speaker, it's forced me to get better on camera, forced me to get better at preparation. So I like solos because it forces you to like. There's no one else to lean on. You're doing a solo podcast. There's no one else to lean on. No one else is there. Yeah, it just depends on the goals. But I think 99% of the people we work with typically have multiple formats. They have an interview and a solo version.
Got it. Okay. What do you see? Because I know you look at data numbers all the time. What style of show produces more listens and downloads? Is there data that can show that?
There's no conclusive data that I've seen, and I've studied a lot of the numbers lately on a lot of big creators. I'm doing a lot of audits lately for people, so it varies, right? You'll have some creators who will have their best episodes by far be an interview, and you'll have other people by far have it as a solo. I'd say right now on in all and funny enough is I see more interview based shows like their best interview or their best episode in terms of performance of downloads will typically be an interview show or interview episode. Now, I don't think that if I had to look at it from like a revenue perspective, like did those creators make money, more money from the episodes that they had interviews on versus the solos? I would put my money on the fact that they probably made more money on the solos because when you're consuming content from a solo person, they are the focus versus in an interview, the guest is the focus, and they're probably going to go follow the guest. So yeah, I it's depends on the creator, but I've seen more people have highly successful episodes lately.
Well, you're able to bring in the guest audience is as well, right? If you're somebody that can pull, pretty decent sized guests that have huge followings, you get a decent sized show there as well. You throw those two numbers together, that can maybe lead to some of the rise. Let's talk a bit about monetization because you mentioned different revenue. We'll get into downloads. What are kind of good numbers to look at, but on the monetization side of things, what are the ways, top 3, top 5 ways that people are monetizing a podcast right now?
Yeah. So I've definitely racked my brain around this, and I kind of come down to four main methods or four main funnels that I've seen people use that make the most money. This isn't to say this is like how the only four ways to make money because tons of ways to make money in podcasting, but for me, there's four. There's obviously the sponsorship route where people are paying you, or an affiliate route. I kind of lump that into one. So there's sponsorship funnels or sponsorship route. That's one way. The other way is getting people to book a call with you to then sell a higher ticket program. So for me, that second one I call the book a call funnel. where we have an interview like this. It goes on YouTube. You have a book call link for you at the show in the description, and they go and find that link and they book a call. That's more of a high ticket method if you're a coach. The third is what's called the hot seat method. Now the hot seat method is like you bring on people who you can actually help, and you're in your coaching mode. So you got your coaching hat on. So it's like you're bringing on people from your audience who are not customers or clients, and you're doing a 20, 15-minute laser coaching call with them, and you're helping them with one problem. And if you want a good case study for this, go look up More Cheese, Less Whiskers. Dean Jackson, legendary marketer, has an entire show. It's got like years worth of content. All he does is this. It's a fantastic show to listen to. Or Pat Flynn. Pat Flynn had a show called Ask Pat 2.0. He could have sold a lot of those people into coaching if he wanted to. I don't think he ever did. So those two show that model works really well. It's called the hot seat coaching method. And then last one is a content upgrade funnel. So that's like, let's just say you've got a some kind of masterclass or free conversion, free giveaway, some sort after this that then leads them to people to a course or a DIY program or some sort that you sell on the back end. Those are the main ways I see podcasters monetizing their show. Now, depending on your business model, right, you may not be a good fit for sponsors, or you may be a better fit for having a content upgrade funnel. So it just depends. But those are the main ways I see the lion's share of our clients making money, or that's how they're doing it.
Yeah, and I would say for the smaller solopreneur, small business owner, it's probably going to be book a call for services or the content upgrade, and then maybe eventually working your way into some sponsorships that align or affiliate products that align with your core brand. Probably a lot easier to get affiliates out of the gate versus a sponsor, because a sponsor is going to want to be able to look at data, numbers, stats, and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you're a coach, course creator, service provider, your best bets are going to be the book a call funnel, or the hot seat funnel. If you're a course creator and you have like a DIY thing, a standalone, doesn't require any of your time, then a lot of times the content upgrade funnel can work, which is basically you putting out a masterclass, a 7-day email series like our buddy Josh, you putting out some kind of free challenge, something. Those are all kind of examples of stuff you could use, and you could send people from the podcast to those things to get them into like the next level of your value ladder.
Who, in your opinion, do you think shouldn't start a podcast?
I think people who are doing it for the wrong reasons. Like if you are trying to do this to get rich quick, probably not the best bet. You're just gonna hate it. Yeah, if you don't like creating content, it's another one. Like a lot of times, business owners love or they enjoy their business, but they enjoy their business and that's it. They don't enjoy creating content for the business, or they don't enjoy talking about the business. And I totally get that. That's probably not a podcast is best for you. Maybe hiring a spokesperson or having someone on your team run a podcast would be a better route. But those are probably the two main buckets. Because you can do an audio only podcast. You don't need to be doing it video per se. So those are the main two.
Your agency, Top 10 Podcast is what it's called now. You had a rebranding back a couple years ago. It was originally Podcast Domination. You started that in 2018, 2019?
2017, I think, podcast domination. Then we changed it because I realized it was really, really masculine. Wasn't really like gender neutral, which I'm like, I like it. It was a great brand for a while, and I just realized like, maybe it's not the most welcoming for like female clients, so I just switched it. So yeah.
And I know you had even had a show prior to that. You were actually, for the audience that doesn't know, Lewis was the first person that ever interviewed me on a podcast, Lean, Healthy, and Ripped Radio. I think that was in 2017. And Lewis's team at Podcast Domination was the launch team. We used his systems. We used his team to edit the first 4 episodes. The artwork that we still use today was put together by Michelle of Lewis's team. So it's played a massive role. And Lewis actually interviewed me on episode 1. So guys, if you haven't ever gone back and actually listened to that, it's a story of how we got here. But that was an interesting start back then. But so you'd been in the game even years prior to that. Take us back and talk a little bit about your journey into podcasting and what did you see back then? Because I think when you got into it, it wasn't what it is today.
Oh gosh, no. There's no AI back then, dude, which is weird, right? Because it's only like 5-6 years ago. But I know the funny thing, like I look back at it, and the thing I saw that attracted me the most was that there are systems. And I'm not the biggest systems guy, but I realized the fact back then, like, oh, I could create 20 episodes in a day and schedule them to go out for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks. That's amazing. Like that in my mind. And then I could hire out different pieces of it. I could schedule it. I could have more control over it versus like having to post on Instagram every single day. Nothing wrong with that. I just, for me, at the back of the day, this is like 2015, 2016, I started my first one. That was way more attractive. And I was like, oh, cool. Like I can do this. I can talk on a mic. I can share stuff and explain health and wellness concepts. Back then, I was mainly doing it, helping guys get six packs. And yeah, that was the biggest attraction to me, dude. It was weird. It was like just just the systems of it. I think I love that, and I literally bought, and I think you probably know this. I bought like an $11 course on Udemy, and I learned the basics, the very raw basics, and got something out there. And that was the mean beginning, and then I started to work with other creators, other guys who wanted just to record and not do anything else.
Now I remember when you made the shift, man, from online fitness into this. We were in the mastermind with Vince at the time, and I don't recall the specific event, but it was like, Luis, you had this thing here. You know, you're helping 3 or 4 people in the room right now. Put that little small business to the side, man, and just go all in on this.
That was scary. It's funny. Vince still busts my balls about it. He's like, "You're," he's, yeah, because remember the event in the hot seat, we did it, and that's kind of where I got the hot seat concept for monetizing podcasts from. Just seeing what we did in Mastermind, how can we use that in other places? But yeah, I still laugh about it to this day because it was such a scary moment having to change your entire identity from being the health and wellness guy to now being the podcast guy. It was such a 180.
The podcast guy. So you said the first one was 2015, 2016. So you're coming up on almost a decade here, man. We mentioned AI a handful of times when we talk about some of the tools that are out there. Outside of AI, what have been other big industry shifts? Because I'm sure there's been a handful of them that you've been able to witness over the last decade that have really changed the industry.
Um, so the biggest one I keep talking about these days is just the fact that YouTube's getting serious in podcasting. They recognize it is a massive has a lot of attention, and they realize that they want to start to be players in the game. So I think just now the biggest change I would say for me is like people getting serious about video podcasting and realizing that it's not just audio anymore. Yes, you can still do that, but you're literally like it's like running it's like running with one leg. So you're literally just hamstringing yourself. So if you can do video, like do video. Like that's just my biggest thing right now is do that. And then you can start to get good at it. And the reason why I would say this is such a big thing is because if you look at Apple, Spotify, Listen Notes, all these places, they're all like individual islands, so to speak, that you have people have to go to. But when people they want to go watch videos online, where do they go? YouTube. Like that's the only place you go to find stuff and search for things, learn how to like fix a leaky faucet, how to change your oil, how to get your first girlfriend, how to talk to women. Like most people are going to YouTube. So it's centralized in a sense. So if you have your podcast there, it just makes it way, way, way more. You're playing on a way bigger field.
And the ability to go viral. I mean, based off of that fact, because I had this epiphany, man, where I realized like most of the shows I would just even quote unquote listen to, I was finding and searching them on YouTube. Now I wouldn't sit there and watch the entire video. I'd have it playing in the background when I'm walking or I'm doing things in around the house, but I'm listening through the video app on YouTube because the search is just so much more dialed in. But because the search is dialed in, because you can tap into keywords, the ability to take off and go viral. I know, I have friends that are in the space now and, have some of their video podcasts with 1 million+ views. They get like 10,000 downloads per month on the audio side, and they're crushing almost 1 million now because the show has just skyrocketed based off of a couple, simple search terms. So video is one. Is there anything else that has really kind of radically shifted the industry?
We said besides AI, but I'm going to include AI in this one, and that is just the fact that like now you can do speech to text, and you can literally have an AI write up show notes for you like seconds. Like that would take hours before. You can literally throw it into a system now. It's getting so smart to where eventually they're going to have it to where you record it in the same software as you publish it, you edit it, you write the show notes. All of that nowadays is pretty much can be done in one system and software. Whereas up until this time, it's all you know how it's like different softwares for recording, different softwares for editing, different softwares for publishing. It's a mess. So now I'm pretty sure in the next couple of years, there's gonna be some pretty good softwares that do everything from recording it. They'll go and clean out your audio, make sure it's perfect. They'll write the show notes, they'll publish it for you, they'll create the clips, they'll post it on social media. Like it will be a seamless system pretty soon. And that's pretty crazy. I don't know. I think you'll still need a human to go in there and edit stuff and like tweak things. But that's going to save so much more time. But what that's going to do is flood the market with a ton of content. And there's still going to be that issue of like what's good and what's bad. Like you're still going to have to put work into making it really good.
Yeah, well, that's where the cream is always going to rise to the top, right? In any marketplace and anything, that it's always going to be the 20% that is producing the 80% of the results. Riverside is getting really close to that. I've been leveraging a lot of AI for probably 6-8 months now, but we'd have to pull the full transcription. We'd have to upload it, which becomes a process because it's so long. You got to break it up into pieces. And then ChatGPT wants to break down the first part when I haven't even given the second part. So now they're giving me this broken description where literally the minute I'm done with this today and it's fully processed inside of Riverside, I can go in there and get the full detailed show notes with timestamps, with talking points. I think they have an AI editing tool as well. We obviously have Chris that does all of that for us as well. But yeah, it is really, changed a lot, man. Even since I started, like our first 58 episodes were recorded through Zoom. So let's talk about the essentials here for people that want to get something off the ground. What's the bare minimum? I mean, I recorded the first intro to the podcast standing in my backyard on my Samsung phone. So can somebody have a podcast that they record straight from their phone? Or let's talk about the bare minimum essentials for a good produced show that we can be proud of and is going to once again impact the listeners.
Yeah. So bare minimum, I would say you could use Zoom. If you have Zoom and a good good webcam, some kind of like mine's like 100 $200 off of Amazon. This mic is around $80. So like I mean, I don't think my setup's amazing, but it's not the worst, right? So a bare minimum that you're for total pricing, I would say you're probably in around like $350 to $400. And that'll get you the mic, the webcam, that'll get you the boom arm you need. So as far as like recording, like what to record it on, like I said, I think Zoom could work. If you're going to go a next level higher, I would say something like a Riverside is really good because like you mentioned, it brings with it the transcripts, the clips, the description, the show notes. I'm pretty sure they're going to have publishing on here. They already do because I guess they're owned by Spotify. So they probably have, you can upload through like Anchor or Megaphone. And then guess what? Megaphone even has and audio spot Anchor even has a monetization piece because now you can insert ads in there as well, which is a whole other thing they're making it easy for you. So bare minimum 350 to 400. That'll probably get you like if you guys want to know names, I have a Logitech 1080p. You just Google that or put that on Amazon, it'll pop right up. I have let's see, I have an ATR 2100X microphone, which is like again $80-$90. This boom arm I think literally cost me $20. It's worked for like 3 years. Like it does not have to be expensive. You do see guys, and I love it when I see guys with like that nice like long table. They've got like a $700 to $1,000 camera that just has a nice wide angle. You know what I mean? And like great lighting like that. If you're gonna step up to that, I've seen people spend anywhere from like $1,500 to $3,000 on that kind of setup just for the desk, the camera, all the things you need for the camera, which is a lot. That's why I don't have a DSLR camera here because this is too much for what I'm using it for. You're just spending anywhere from like 1,500, like $3,000 there, that's fine if you can do that. But bare minimum, you definitely don't need that stuff starting out.
Yeah, I was 200 episodes in until I invested in a DSLR. I bought a refurbished, pre-owned one. I spent less than $500 on the camera. They're sure I was 200 episodes in until I, dropped 300 on a high quality mic. But it was at that point, I went from a $30 microphone to start the show. At episode 50, I upgraded to like an $80 microphone, and I had that one that carried me all the way through up until 200. Like, it was really kind of once I proved to myself, like, hey, I'm 5 years into this thing almost now. Like, I think I'm going to stick around for a while, so it's worth a little bit of the investment. And we're putting more of an emphasis on the YouTube side. So, guys, if you're listening to the audio side right now, click the link down there and subscribe on YouTube because we're really trying to grow that platform. And obviously, as Luis said, that's the future. Let's talk about that, man. Where do you see podcasting going in the next 3 to 5 years? I mean, are we replacing NBC and CNN, or is that even further down the road? Like, where in your eyes do you see this thing going?
Well, what's scary and weird is that, like, if you look at, like, Canada, they had, like, this law that, like, all of the podcasts in Canada had to register with, like, the National Broadcast Service or something like that, and they're censoring podcasts, and I was just like, "Are you serious right now?" Um, so I don't think I'm hoping we don't have regulation on it, but I do in the future see to where, like, there may be some regulation in here, like, in the US or other places. I haven't heard anything. I'm just thinking 4 or 5 years out, like you asked, like, there might be regulation on this stuff. Let's hope not. Freedom of let's hope we keep freedom of speech and keep it simple. But so for one thing, I think AI will replace 80% of the human need. Like, you'll be able to record it, like I said before, and it'll just like run through a predetermined workflow, and you'll have your podcast pretty much good with little human editing. I think YouTube will continue to dominate because I don't see anyone else replacing them. If you look at the numbers, Apple's actually gotten smaller in terms of like market share. YouTube's grown bigger. Spotify, I think, stayed the same roughly in proportion to what they were before. So, so yeah, there's not. I don't know too much there, but I just see it like AI taking over a lot of the human aspect. YouTube's continuing to get bigger. If you're a personal brand or a business owner listening to this, I think there is value in producing video content. I would just say start out with what you're an expert in, or what start out with what you enjoy and what you're knowledgeable in, right? Before going off and talking about the sun, moon, and the stars. Uh, like we talked about before, like find that thing that has like a wide lens of people who like it, but like a very niche, very specific element of that, right? So something that you're hopefully an expert in or you're passionate about. Um, but yeah, that's where I see it going for like most business owners, and yeah, well, hopefully the regulation thing will will not happen. We'll see.
Let's hope not, man. Not that we've said anything that would probably fall into unregulated territory. Maybe sometimes. I mean, we do get limited on monetization on YouTube. So here's the thing I don't understand, man, is I could be a female and I could go on YouTube and shake my ass and make ads. But if I talk about the men that are struggling with watching those videos, they're going to limit my monetization. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But different conversation for a different day there. Your background, Lewis, I know you were raised by two immigrant entrepreneur parents. Um, you've had a very successful run here with Top 10 Podcasts. I think ClickFunnels record award winner there as well with the things that you do. How much of your early influence with having immigrant parents that were running a business has played into the success for you and your businesses?
So what's funny is that like I never saw, I see it more now, but like I never liked having a job. So I just didn't like having people control my schedule, and that's kind of the main reason why I got into it. I was like, I don't want to be on someone else's schedule. So you had to come to work on this day, or I got to call out. I just hated that. So to the point where I wanted to figure something out. So I don't know if seeing my parents have their own business, even though they're self-employed, they're self-employed, not entrepreneurs in the sense of that they have multiple businesses and they don't do anything, right? Like they're still heavily in the business. So I think it inspired me to and showed me what I don't want, which is like I don't want to be owned by my business. I want to put God first, my wife and family second, and then my career third. And really that's hard to live in. And I've found that struggle. I found that big struggle because I've seen my parents like they're all in their business and they're successful, but they are the business, right? And that's not good work-life balance. So it helped me see what I didn't want in a entrepreneurial career, and then it helped me just kind of like realize that there's other ways. I think outside of just a traditional 9 to 5, which some people unfortunately like that's what all their surroundings tell them to do, and like that's all they do. So those are two main things I'd say what helped me. Um, more I'd say probably 80/20 is seeing what I didn't want, like being so in the business that if you're sick, it may fall. If you're sick for 6 months, it may just all crash and burn. God forbid that happens, right? So, but yeah, that's the biggest thing I
Well, they
saw.
were in the restaurant industry, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
very very typical in small family owned restaurants. It's not really going to kind of get to the corporate level that you're able to kind of step out of that. I mean, I know a handful of people that have run businesses, and that's what they say, man. It's like don't get into the restaurant industry unless you're prepared to work 80 to 100 hours a week.
yeah, and my parents are late 60s and still pulling those kind of hours. And it's like they're getting better now, but like, man, yeah, I saw that coming out of college. I was like, I don't want to sign up for that. So, yeah, that was the online route for me.
Talk to us about top 10 podcasts. Obviously, we mentioned that there's a transition from the more masculine, just branding podcast domination into top 10 sponsors now. We have a much more broad appeal. What is it that you guys do over there? Who are you servicing? And what's the future look like?
Yeah, well, definitely our current state to what our future looks like is definitely different. So we mainly help right now entrepreneurs who are typically they already have a successful 7 or 8 figure business and they want a podcast where they just record it and then someone else, i.e., us, does everything else from like producing it, like editing it, posting it, ranking it, getting it to rank in the top charts, and then helping them hopefully with monetization if they're in a place where they can monetize a show. Some shows just like they're just passion projects and that's cool. We typically like to work with people who have a ambition or a goal to monetize a podcast some way. I think for us, we've noticed that like we really, really enjoy working with health and wellness and fitness nutrition experts, and there's lots of ways we can help them grow and also monetize. So we found that like I think, and I'm as this owner, so um, the future for me looks like just kind of doubling down on that vertical. Yeah. So whether it happens like right away or not, I don't know, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning towards these days.
Using the content outside of the audio and video streaming. I know there's a lot of ways that we use it. Speaking to the person now that's kind of on the fence, like, Lewis, I'm thinking about it, man, but that's a lot of work, just for one episode a week. Like, how can a podcast, become micro based content? Like, how do we kind of distribute this across all the platforms?
So this is great because I actually I left a kind of a cliffhanger earlier. I said that I'll get back to why I think that you should create short form content before podcasting and all that stuff. And the reason why is because you shouldn't start a podcast until you know the content works or you know that you love this piece of content and you know that other people love it. And the way you do that is by producing short form content. So literally spend 90 days, spend this entire quarter producing 60 to 100 reels of the content or the topic that you're going to talk about on a longer form podcast. Because if it proves itself out and it is good on a short form, the chances are you can extrapolate that into a longer form piece of content, and that could work as well, right? So instead of spending the time, money, and energy investing in a podcast, go and hire an editor and spend the next quarter producing reels on just your stuff. Post it on YouTube. The algorithm will definitely tell you whether people like it or not. Post it on TikTok as well and see what's popping off and say at the end of 90 days, I think I've got something here because my average views are up around 1 to 3 or 5,000 views per video. Or it's like, no, none of them got over 500 views. I don't think people like this. Or I need to change how I'm positioning, how I'm like approaching this topic. Right. So I think short form is great for that. Like you should do that first before podcasting. I even told someone that's on a sales call recently. Yeah, that's what I would say, dude. I wish I had known that 5, 6 years ago when it started. So
Well, I don't think the short form video content wasn't anywhere near where it was. Has that been something that's changed the podcasting space as well? Is just the ability to take some of this micro clips and leverage them across IG, across TikTok, across YouTube.
you know what's so we for years, I'd say from like 2019, like 2022, everyone thought like, like yeah, like reels from the podcast is the way to go because you multiply it. But the fact of the matter is 95% of those reels will never get that much traction that you will hope them to get. Like repurpose stuff from a podcast that goes on to Instagram, TikTok, it just is not good. And it's because it's not made for the platform, right? Like it's recycled content from another medium. So you're hoping somebody from Instagram is going to um, like your content that just got cut out of a 60-minute conversation. It's just not going to happen. And I've interviewed Ryan McGinn on this, who's a big TikTok and Reels creator, who's really really bright with this stuff. And it's like the way I see it after just learning from him and other people is just there's not the hook isn't there, the content's not created for the platform, so it's really hard to try and like jam that square peg in the round hole. I think for years we tried to do that with reels, and I still think you can still use them, but don't expect them to like take off and become.
They're not going to be your viral clips. Yeah, I've spoken with Ryan about this as well, and they have a team over there that's chopping it up, but they'll go as far as like they're literally pulling different pieces and meshing it together to try to one coherent thought. Where in reality, like those things that were said were 15 to 20 minutes apart. And it's like the amount of time that somebody would have to spend to do that. It's like just sit down and record a lot of reels. This was kind of like literally like an epiphany I just had over the weekend, because that's been a bulk of what I've used. And I'm like, Frank, why isn't your IG taken off the way that it should? And it's like, I'm repurposing, and it's not made specifically for the platform. Literally this morning, I sat downstairs in my living room, had the whole setup, and recorded a specific for the platform content, because I did it in the past, and those were all the ones that took off. So it's interesting we're having this. I'm still going to leverage and use it, because for me, it's there, and you can use a lot of the AI, and even some of our editors are super low cost. So we'll still put it out there just because it gets us out there. And then every once in a while, you'll get one that will do okay.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You'll get one that gets 1,000, 2, 3,000 views, but it's not going to be your ones that are doing 10, 20,000 plus. Um, I think you still, like you said, so it should have a good mix of like repurposed stuff plus the stuff that's like the direct to camera, scripted out, lots of really good edits. I think those are worth spending money on, and that's what I'm doing too. Like I have a team, so my team like plans the content with me, and then I go and shoot it, and then I'll typically try and do like right now in 2024, the goal is roughly like 5 to 10 new reels a month. Just like that's like face to camera, like edited, like pre-planned stuff, and then all the stuff from podcasts like this, they get scattered in there as well. Um, and yeah, that's really the goal.
More than anything, it's a brand authority, I think, build as well. It's like, if you got great quality lighting and you got, professional looking, studio and microphone, it's like if people see some of the viral stuff, then they go to your page like, oh, this guy's got a podcast as well. Then they kind of explore the brand a little bit. So I can see it kind of, playing into there as well. I'm going to tee you up here, man. See where kind of you take this last bit, and we'll kind of wrap up the conversation. But, title of the show, why everyone should have a podcast in 2024. So that's kind of, where I want to kind of end here today. So, you meet somebody at a restaurant, you talk to somebody in an elevator while you're traveling, maybe sit next to them on the airplane. What's your pitch as somebody that's, runs an agency, manages over 500 podcasts at this point, on why everybody, absent of the people that we addressed earlier that don't enjoy it, aren't going to find the passion, should have a podcast? And I mean, and we're going to go wide here, right? So I hope that this is an answerable question. But whether you're a 9 to 5 or you're a small time entrepreneur, you're C-level executive somewhere, like, why should everybody in 2024 at least think about having a podcast?
I think it is simply because the skills you develop as doing interviews, as recording stuff, like the skills you develop that you don't even know you're developing are so important. You can like those skills are great. You'll use them in Zoom calls. You'll use them with your kids. You'll use them when you meet new people in your community. And it's just besides all the other accolades that could happen, like the connections and intros and networking and all the other stuff that I've gotten and you've gotten as well. Um, that's the biggest thing. I'd say, like, bare minimum, you do 20 episodes, you're gonna become a better interviewer. You're gonna become a better speaker. You're gonna become a better a lot of other things, and you're gonna learn a ton of stuff. So it's like it's just a skill acquisition, I think, is worth it. Um, and then on top of that, if you're strategic and smart, the networking effect you can have with it is also huge.
I love that you went there with that answer, man, because I've said it, I don't know how many times up to this point. We're recording episode 235 at this point. So, we've put in the hours of work, man. Coming up on 5 years this July, we'll celebrate. Outside of, this room here, I got a bookshelf with probably 700 books in the personal development space. I've spent at this point in masterminds and events and seminars and all that, probably well over 6 figures on my personal development education. I truly feel, Lewis, and I actually believe this to be true to my core, that running this podcast has produced more growth in me than those books and the events and the mastermind combined. So I love that you went there with that answer, because it has formed me into being a better listener, a better speaker, better communicator, and then just the insights, man. Like I said, I like to go underneath the surface with a lot of people that have written great books. I like to ask the experts the questions that they don't talk about in the books. So I would second that, guys. Like I even talked about this 2 years ago on the January 1st episode of 5 things to kind of move your life forward. And it's like, have intentional conversations, almost like a mock podcast, right? Because so many of us live our lives stuck to a device. Like, look a person in the eyes, have real engaging conversation with them, absent of any distractions, and do that for a year straight once a week and watch your life excel and move forward.
Yeah, interviews are like that. Like you're all in for freaking 30, 60 minutes. There is no snoozing off. Like you can't. So, yeah, it's a good point. It's a really good point with interviews. I forgot they're intense. So I appreciate and applaud you for doing interviews. I continue to do them, but they are intense. So I don't do as many as I used to.
Yeah. Well, I love it, man. For me, this started as a passion back in the day, that turned into a business, that to this day still continues to be a passion. So, whatever happens with Rebuilt Recovery here in the future, we'll continue to help men, but I don't see me ever not having something like this because yeah, I love it, man. I look forward to this and I've been looking forward to this one for a while. So tell the audience, tell the guys out there where they can find you, where they can connect with you if they're interested in maybe reaching out, to find out what it would take for them to get a show off the ground, plug our stuff, and we'll wrap it up with our last and final question.
Yeah. So first things first, I have a free gift for anyone listening to this. So with the monetization stuff we talked about, there's actually a free course. If you go to it's top 10 podcast, we'll have it linked in the show notes as well. top10podcast.com/monetization masterclass, I believe is the hyperlink. Go there. It's free for now. And I'll make sure it's free for you guys when you get it. So no, so take some time to produce. But yeah, that's kind of where we go through how to monetize your show and like how to make it interesting and get people to actually listen. It eventually will be a paid course, but for right now I'm doing it for free. So I'm excited to share that. And outside of that, top10podcast.com is where you can find a lot of our stuff. And that's probably the easiest way to find me.
Incredible. Guys. So yeah, top10podcast.com/monetization masterclass. That's a real mouthful there, but we'll have a link down there in the show notes for those somewhat struggling with the typing side of things. We'll make sure to get you a really simple link to click on, but make sure to connect with Luis if you want to kind of explore some of these things. He's had incredible guests on his show as well. So we'll link all that stuff down there as well. Luis, you talked about your faith there for briefly back when you were talking about how you try to align your life. What does living a superhuman life mean to you?
I think it's definitely changed over the years. I think it's like it's living in full surrenderance to God, and that is hard. So I think it's really surrendering to the Lord and being okay with whatever He puts in your life and whatever challenges come your way. I think it's really surrendering to that, and that is a hard thing for all men to do. I think that's a superhuman life. You can live like that, then you are superhuman.
Incredible. Guys, connect with Luis, top10podcast.com/monetization masterclass. Give them a follow on the platforms there as well. We'll link all the socials down in the show notes. Guys, if you got value out of this one, we want to help make this year the best year for you. We want to continue to bring on experts and guests just like Luis and all the people we've had the honor and pleasure to interview over the last 4+ years. And we can continue to get bigger and bigger names by the more that this show grows. So you want to support us and you want to continue to get the top quality guests here. Make sure to head over Spotify, Apple, wherever you are listening, leave us a 5-star rating and review. But more importantly, if somebody in your life is kind of on the fence and maybe they need to hear this to kick them off and take that jump into launching a podcast, do us a favor and do them the blessing by sharing today's conversation. But for Luis Diaz, your host, Coach Frank Rich, we love you guys. We'll see you next week.